when you run a team in the position you're in, that's completely different.
I couldn't agree with you more. Being the general manager, I vividly remember looking at my husband and being like, people don't usually leave this job willingly.
Unfiltered Soccer with Landon and Tim, presented by Volkswagen. Volkswagen has long been a supporter of soccer in America and has proudly been a partner of U.S. Soccer for over 5 years.
LD, we always get the most dynamic guests on the show. Super excited for today. We have the general manager of the NWSL, Kansas City Current, the already holders of the 2025 NWSL Shield, Caitlin Carducci. Caitlin's an interesting, the journey that she's had, LD, and the path that she's taken to get to where she is now is pretty awesome. Manager of Member Affairs at U.S. Soccer, Director of Player Affairs at NWSL, Director of Soccer Ops at Kansas City Current, and it's almost no wonder that she is where she is now as a general manager. So I'm super excited to kind of tap into that and hear about that journey.
Yeah, Caitlin, thanks for joining. We know you have bigger and better things to do, although you guys are kind of resting now. You're like 100 points clear of everyone, so you're fine.
We're rotating.
You're rotating.
We're not resting.
Smart.
We're trying to figure out what's in the water in Kansas City because it's amazing.
So
Missouri
Caitlin,
River. It's that Missouri River,
That's it.
Coming straight past the stadium. Get some nice Missouri River water.
No doubt.
So take us through a little bit, Caitlin, for people who aren't aware of you, just your journey, how your brief journey through soccer, and then how you ended up where you are, because it is quite a fascinating journey.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those peak, you never know who you're going to know, when you're going to know, and what that turns into type deal. So, I like most of us played soccer my entire life, was never even good enough to do ODP type stuff. Just was happy to get a scholarship to go play D2 at Ashland University. And then in law school, I basically realized my favorite thing about law school was helping with the soccer team. And so that was where I was like, hey, this law thing is cool. And it was a lifelong dream of mine, but how do I stay in sports? How do I use this? And not really was interested in the agent piece at that point. You're talking, this is 15 years ago. It wasn't something I was super intrigued in. And so shifted into NCAA compliance. And then after a couple years there, found myself at US Soccer and used that NCAA compliance to do, fun stuff like international transfers and player registration. I vividly remember, I believe, Tim waking up at midnight to request your ITC to go to Colorado on
amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's incredible.
I was one of those where they were like, can we just make sure that we get it? And I emailed the FA and talked to them. They're like, we'll get it. So don't worry.
That's
and they
amazing.
were like, no. And so, set an alarm, woke up, hit the button, went back to sleep. I think you played that night. So, but did that at US Soccer, really enjoyed that piece. And then that's what kind of branched me into the membership aspect, because obviously everything involving ITCs is external facing. You're talking to youth members, you're talking to the professional leagues, you're talking to other federations. And so branched that into just a little bit more outward facing, stakeholder engagement, those pieces. Kind of just hit my limit at US Soccer on that front in 2020. And, what a great time for us all to think about what else we could do with our life. And then went to the NWSL for 18 months and was a great experience. I laugh all the time because I think a lot of the rules that I have to follow now, I wrote. So I have that. And then went back to US Soccer. Was really happy to be working with Cindy. And then that was when they brought JT in, helped with a lot of stuff there. And particularly where another one of those, and now you find yourself where you are today, was I got involved in the Friends and Family program, World Cup, both in Qatar and then down in New Zealand / Australia. And that's where I really started to connect with Vlatko more than anything, was working with him on how we wanted that program to run, for the team and what we wanted it to look like.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, became very close with his wife, actually. His wife was the one where when he started here in Kansas City, she was like, you might want to call Caitlin and see if she's interested in coming to Kansas City. And
wow.
So yeah, and he had a coffee with him in Chicago, and then very kindly convinced my boyfriend at the time, now husband, that we needed to just, go from Chicago down to Kansas City. We're just moving our way out west.
Yeah.
Started in Columbus, went to Chicago, So Kansas City. But yeah, got here and was really happy in my role, really happy just trying to get our, this new, program in place, if you will, young team, still a
Mhm.
startup, but brand new coach, brand new staff, a lot of turnover on players and process, and then opening a brand new stadium too.
Mhm.
And never expected to find myself where I am now as far as having the GM title, but
Mhm.
it was next man up,
Yeah.
so there was a gap. They asked for me to step in. And I said, if that's what it takes for us to be successful, I'm in. And we're doing all right on the success front at this point.
Yeah,
So
you are.
That's pretty
That's great.
clear.
Caitlin, I'm just curious. I mean, when I hear this story, right, you're you're always part of a team, but when I think of being at the league, you're overseeing everything. When I think about being at US Soccer, yes, you're for Team America, for Team USA, for the men's and women's national team, but there's a bunch of them. You then go to Kansas City and there's just one,
Hmm.
right? And also in the general manager role in NWSL, if you have the right ownership, which I know you do, we'll tap into Chris and Angie Long, who are amazing. They give you autonomy to say, like, go, like, make us a success. And I know you have this collaborative team, but what's the difference in the day to day and the pressures? Because when you run a team in the position you're in, that's completely different than being a singular voice, a voice amongst many in a room.
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It was the biggest change for me, even just from an ops standpoint.
Yeah.
I went from, to your point, like when the last time I was singularly focused on like one team was when I was in law school. So again, like that was 15 years ago when
Right.
I was just focused on, our women's soccer team. So that was a big change. And it's, changes as far as like your life schedule,
Yeah.
just how things shift and are different. And then just the way too where it's like you live and die by the success of that team. And obviously everyone measures success in different ways. We've this team had, when we got here, it was year 4 of the club, and it had that like up down. Whereas like year 1, trying to get it together,
Mhm.
candidly, they had like 6 weeks to start the team. Year 2 found their way into the championship game. Year 3, back bottom of the table. And so we
Yeah.
came in year 4 and we're like, we've got to stop this yo-yoing.
Yeah.
So knowing that, getting stability and really installing standards and expectations for the players was absolutely something new. And then being the general manager, I vividly remember looking at my husband and being like, people don't usually leave this job willingly. So we just need to, like,
Mhm.
that is something that we just need to be ready for.
Yeah.
Same mentality as I'm sure, coaches and players. It's
Sure.
like it's very clear what the expectation is. And yes, you might be given a little bit longer, leash depending on where you're going and where you're coming from and where you're going.
Mhm.
But that was one where no, we are given every resource that we could possibly
Yeah.
imagine here. And so there's little to no excuses not to be taking advantage of that and then
Mhm.
seeing the success on the field.
We've been around sports, Caitlin, our whole lives, and Tim and I for sure love all sports, and we follow all sports. It's not people think success with teams is like some accident or you have a good season, but long-term success is not an accident. And I'll just speak from my experience at the end of the Wave season. We went to Kansas City to play, and I'll never forget showing up. It was the first stadium in NWSL where I
Mhm.
walked in and went, "Oh my God."
Mm.
Sold out. It was beautiful. It was specific for the current and the NWSL team, which was unique. And it was a real, it's just the way I classified it after was like, this was a real soccer environment, a real game, a real stadium. People around the stadium were so proud. It felt real. And I hadn't seen that in NWSL at that point. And in MLS, it's only very recent. Around the world, it's classic. It's everywhere.
Mhm.
So can you just speak to the support you get? And I was going to ask you, what do you attribute this season's success to? You guys are, I don't know, 15, 19, 20 points ahead of the next closest teams. And what do you attribute that to? And can you just speak to what good ownership and good process and good leadership means to an organization?
It is the biggest difference maker because when you get to a certain point, especially from an ownership standpoint, for the most part, I would say across the board in this league, you now have highly capitalized owners.
Yeah.
There are this league went from starting under, millionaires to now I think all of them are, billionaires. And that's not meant to, be contrite. That's just factual as far as like what it takes to be successful in having the capital to back it up. So a lot of people have that, and they have the resources and they have the desire, but it's the how. And like you said, those difference makers. Now we have a couple options here in Kansas City that just make it a little easier. You guys have both played in major markets. There's a bit more land in Kansas City than there is in New York or Chicago or LA, but that still takes the vision of Chris and Angie Long to say, we don't need to just play at, Children's Mercy Park. We don't need to just, share a facility with someone else. Like, we're going to invest and we're going to get the land and we're going to put the infrastructure in place. So that is the difference maker. Like that is where, we sit there and we do that. And then their awareness of not only what it takes to be successful, but their ability to look at someone like Vlaco and, say, hey, listen, this guy is a genius and we are aware of what he can do and how we should just let him cook, if you will. They're very involved. We keep them up to date on as many things as they need and want to know. But at the end of the day, they've given him a lot of autonomy of who is on the roster and then who is on the field, with their blessing and awareness. And I think that's what really helps is they're not involved in a way where they're meddling. They're involved because they're passionate and they want to know what's going on, not because they're trying to, impart their, thoughts. It's more or less like, hey, we want to know who's starting this weekend because we're fans.
Yeah.
So like, what's the rotation look like? It's more that than it is, hey, you need to, so-and-so needs to play. It's not that type of thing here, at least not since I've been here.
Well, I want to expand on that because I also want to show Chris and Angie Long a ton of love because they are special people. They are passionate. They've become good friends of mine. I actually just saw them recently at FanFest in Kansas City. You've touched on some of it, but when I think of like Kansas City and the colors and your ability to put butts in seats and this in the beautiful stadium, Patrick Mahomes and his wife being real part of the team. And as you mentioned, Chris and Angie are fans, but they are so passionate and giving and committed. Does that trickle down? And I say this as a preface to the NWSL has suffered for a very long time, in a lot of ways. And so often the women don't feel loved and needed and respected. And I feel like with Chris and Angie, they've turned the table there. Can you touch more on, does that trickle down to the players and to the fans? Do they understand just how amazing and committed Chris and Angie are?
I think they do. And we see it mostly when, we have the players who come in from other teams, whether by free agency or trade or whatever else. We've got a handful of players who have been here since the beginning of the club in 2021. And then you have a handful of others who have either, gotten here in the last 2 years. And then obviously we had a couple people, show up this year. Sure. And their experience of playing in the stadium as visitors versus as the home team, obviously it's night and day, and they appreciate that. But one of the things that I think our players realize, and then also like our opposing players realize, is our brand, our crest, our colors are everywhere. It is not a situation where, the Chiefs have been, ridiculously successful over the last 7 years or whatever it is. But it's not like you see, the Chiefs logo and that's it. If you see the Chiefs logo, our logo is right next to it, along with the Royals and Sporting. But it's like, that is a conscious effort that they have made to make sure that there's never a time that anyone can forget that there are 4 professional, top tier professional teams in this city and in this market. So they've gone out of their way to make sure of that. And I think the players realize it too. Again, you land at the airport, there's our colors are right next to everyone else's. And that's huge just for people to see. And it's great for fans. It's great for opposing fans. It's great for opposing players. It's just that marketability and that knowledge is what really helps, because then when you see, the crest in the news or on TV or, as a, website or whatever else, like then you realize what's going on, and then you want to get a ticket to the greatest show in town. That's arguably one of the harder tickets to get.
Amazing.
And they want to come and experience our game day, which is just a phenomenal opportunity for everyone.
Yeah. The Unfiltered Soccer podcast is brought to you by Volkswagen, the presenting partner of US Soccer.
As the U.S. gets ready to host the world for soccer's biggest moment, Volkswagen is helping people discover new turfs and new ways to play the beautiful game right here in the U.S.
From deaf and power wheelchair soccer to beach and futsal, VW is actively supporting all the communities and teams within the U.S. soccer ecosystem. They've signed U.S. soccer talent from across the portfolio of the Federation and will be helping to give these less popular forms of soccer a platform moving forward.
As a longtime friend of Volkswagen, I'm excited to support them in their mission to increase visibility of all forms of soccer. I was recently on set with them shooting their new campaign to do just that.
Keep an eye out for that launching soon, alongside the all-new redesigned 2025 Tiguan. It's a beautiful car. We've even had one with us at a recent live show. Make sure to check it out in person and learn more at VW.com. There's nothing better than feeling like someone has your back and that things are going to get done without you even having to ask.
Like fans who start to sing and chant at the exact moment their team needs to rally.
A coach who can change strategies at halftime to help their team win.
A keeper you know is defending your goal.
Or a forward who is always ready to receive the ball.
At Unfiltered Soccer, Tim and I know all too well how important it is to be sure someone out there has your back. And that's precisely why AT&T has a new guarantee.
The AT&T guarantee is all about having your back. When you're with AT&T, if there's a network interruption, they'll proactively make it right with a credit for a full day of service, guaranteed.
Visit att.com/guarantee to learn more. Terms and conditions apply.
AT&T. Connecting changes everything.
Credit for fiber downtime lasting 20 minutes or more, or wireless downtime lasting 60 minutes or more, caused by a single incident impacting 10 or more towers. Restrictions and exclusions apply. See att.com/guarantee for full details. All right, Timmy, I want to tell you about a time I had to choose a much chiller path. 2009 in Seattle, we're playing Real Salt Lake in the MLS Cup final. We go to penalties. Who misses a penalty? This guy.
You.
Got back on the bus. I was crying in the back of the bus. And I had this moment where I had a realization that, yes, I missed a penalty. Yes, we lost chance at winning an MLS Cup final. But I said, you know what? Like, I did everything I could have. I tried my hardest, and it didn't work out. And when you embrace that chill mindset, it's a good time to choose chill. And as always, crack open a Coors Light.
Make the most of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Visit CoorsLight.com/USLNT. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Beer.
You talked about players, Caitlin, that have come from opposing teams. Earlier this year, you traded for Allie Sentner, and she's fun to watch. And she's for people who don't know, just a rising star in the women's game, and with the national team now, and with the current. And how does that process work now? A lot of our fans are familiar with European football, soccer. MLS that has, literally a rule for everything you can imagine. What's the process like to go get a player like that in NWSL, and how do you make that happen?
First is obviously the internal buy-in. So we knew a couple things going into this season, and then obviously things change as the season goes on. So we knew that we had a very experienced midfield and just needed to be aware of they're performing at the top of their game, but there will come a time that might not be the case, and we needed to be ready for it. You want to be proactive in those instances and not reactive. So we knew that. We had talked about, what is that next piece of the midfield. So we'd done that. And then once we found ourselves going into the summer break without two of our main, 10s. Dabinia had been injured. Unfortunately, we knew she was going to come back, but we didn't know when. And then obviously there's a build-up process to that. You're not coming back from being off for, 6 to 8 weeks and playing 90s immediately. And then, Vanessa's on maternity leave and expecting her first child. So knowing that we had a real need then, like an immediate need was key. So it really started with internally saying, hey, who are players that would fit in our system? And then you'd say, okay, who's available? And pretty much, as you guys know, everyone's available until you make the phone call.
That's right.
Not available.
That's right. I agree with that.
So that's the biggest thing is like we made a phone call. It was called Utah and said, is this a player that you're interested in moving? Not surprisingly, it took a couple calls to see if that did, because when you have a player of that caliber that is so important to your club, you have to be really certain as far as what your next step is if you let them go. And so once we knew that we had at least a two-way conversation going on, then that's when, Vlaco and I really started talking to Chris and Angie and just saying like, this is what we think it's going to take. If these numbers are that we are not comfortable with, then totally get it. We just need to move on to our next aspect. So, but yeah, it was relatively simple because players want to come here.
Yeah.
We've rarely had a situation where we've been interested in a player and the club is willing to move them and the player is unwilling.
Sure.
Now, there can be any number of reasons for that. I mean, you guys know your family life, your city, your, whatever else, cost of living, things, whether your playing time, all of those pieces. But we knew that if we could bring Allie in here, that she would have a great experience in Kansas City. And then we knew that we would be able to help take her to the next level as far as just our background of developing players. And it's only a couple years, but like you can't really argue with when you're looking at the players who have come into the environment and the trajectory that they've taken since they've gotten here. So knowing that we could help her continue to go from being that rising star to just being the star, both here and, internationally. So once we got to that point, it came down to the wire. I mean, candidly, I think at 3 separate times, I was like, I think it's dead. I think we've tapped out our resources. I think Utah's understanding. And then it's one of those words, wait. And then it came together at the end pretty quickly. But yeah, it was a willing trade partner and a willing player. And then really it comes down to finances and how that works. And like we said, I'll keep banging the Chris and Angie long drum of they make sure that we have everything we could ever need or want.
Yeah, it doesn't happen without them.
Yeah. So the other side of that coin is, and I think in the men's game, we know this for certain, is the allure of playing in Europe is a big thing for the men, right? Like no matter what, no matter how great you are or how comfortable you are, you're like, that's just a thing in men's global football. And I think when I look at the women's side of the game, one, it's money for sure. You have to pay players in order to keep them. I think the other side of it is if they feel loved, if they feel comfortable, which you're creating in Kansas City or have created in Kansas City. So you're creating a special environment where players want to play. But how difficult is it to keep some of the women here who have a desire to go play abroad? Like, there's this push-pull sort of aspect to it that I'm curious about.
I think it's something we're constantly going to be not fighting, but working through. Like you said, on the men's game, it's the draw of Champions League. There's a huge draw of Champions League on the women's side too. And especially you just had 2 Americans win with Arsenal. And so, not to mention numerous others with Lyon. I think Allie Krieger was with, she was Frankfurt when she won. But anyway, like there is that more recent history of Americans going abroad and then having success, especially in the Champions League. So I think that draw and then the lack of financial constraints that they have compared to what we have, like those are things that we're always going to have to battle. And to your point, you can play within the salary cap that you're given, and that's how it's going to be. And that's okay. That's how you manage that. But it's the differentiators of things that don't hit your salary cap and what that experience looks like. And for us, it's, you will play in a packed stadium.
Yep.
You will be somewhere where we never have to adjust our schedule based on another team. Your facilities are yours and you will always be the priority. So there is no, there's rain, so we can't train today because the men have to. No, we'll go out there whenever we need to. We have, a 6-person grounds crew that's doing nothing except keeping these
Amazing.
pitches pristine for your use and nothing more. So those are the pieces that make a huge difference as far as, you can go to Europe and like I said, we will probably constantly be having those conversations because I think everyone does have that tipping point of price, and it might be salary and it might be, return on investment that you have to look at from a transfer standpoint. But I think if we continue to differentiate the NWSL as far as being very, very competitive, top to bottom, where every game matters, and then knowing that, we're building up to, fortunately, CONCACAF starting with the Women's Champions Cup and then a FIFA Women's Club World Cup, we can keep ourselves level from where that goes.
Caitlin, a couple more, and thanks for taking the time. This is really enlightening for us and then for all of our listeners too. How are you, having worked at US Soccer, you understand that side of it and the pull to get women into the national team, right? And now you're on the club side. And so can you take us through, I'm sure you've had these conversations already, and then I want to talk, my follow-up will be big picture, but how do you manage that relationship with people in US Soccer? Emma calls players in. It's maybe during, I'm making this up, but during a playoff run, or you're trying to, you don't have to worry about this, but trying to secure a playoff spot, et cetera. How do you manage that relationship and saying, yes, we'll let you go versus no, we need her here? And how does that dynamic work? Because in the men's game, it's certainly a big dynamic. And how do you manage that?
We have a lot of touch points with US Soccer, both from, my standpoint. I'm talking to people at US Soccer. Vlatko's, I'm sure, talking to Emma regularly. Our medical team is talking to their medical team. Our performance team is talking to their performance team. So there are just a lot of two-way communication lines that are going, and that's fantastic. When I was at the league, that was when US Soccer was still subsidizing the national team players' league salaries. So it was a lot more like you had to give in to the federation because you were aware of what was keeping the league afloat in those, that first 10, 12 years. And now that the league is a lot more stable, you have a lot less of that, where it's so much so that you must, you must give in, or you must send them early, or let them stay late, or anything of that nature. So that's really positive, both for US Soccer and for the league, that we now have that more regular relationship as far as players going back and forth. I think Emma coming from a club helps a lot too.
Yeah.
She very much so gets the idea of hey, if you guys are, in the playoff hunt, or you're, looking at that, she should be able to look and see hey, where is there a situation where I can look at a player that's, possibly not in the playoffs already. And then this is a great opportunity for them to come in and get some heavy minutes, because I know their season is going to be over, in a week's time, versus how do I work with the clubs to manage, what is best for the player coming in. And so far we've had no issues with that. We've had a bunch of players in, which is great. We've had 5 separate players in. And I don't even think that includes Allie at this point, because she hasn't been called in since she got to Kansas City. So we've handled that balance really well. And I hope that continues with this next window, because it's, going into the month of playoffs. So there's going to be 8 teams in the league.
Right.
And who knows if we'll know who those 8 teams are by then. Probably not, given the way the table looks right now.
It's tight.
Yeah, there will have to be that balance between, fully understanding that these players being called in to play for their country is a phenomenal honor. You should never, stand in their way. But making sure that all 3 parties are aligned on what's best in that situation, given any number of circumstances, is where we just need to be willing and able to have a lot of conversations amongst ourselves.
I think that, just last question here, Caitlin, just to follow up on that. I think what you said is so important. So Vlatko came from he's been with the national team and a club team. You've been with the national team and a club team. Emma's been with the national team and a club team. So you guys have good understanding of all those. I think we're seeing this on the men's side a little bit with Mauricio Pochettino. He's never been part of a national team structure. So it almost seems like he favors the club team. He's let a lot of players deal with, go play with their club teams and be part of their club teams. And some of us are like, well, hold on, what about the national team, right? So there's a balance there that needs to, I think, be struck. And I guess my last question, and I witnessed this quite a bit with the Wave, and I'm just going to ask it bluntly. There are players in the league, and we won't name them, who will literally not train, miss club games, not want to play club games so that they can get ready in 3 weeks for a national team friendly, right? And you know what I'm talking about. Do you see that starting to shift, and how do you have those conversations? Because when I would see that, it blew my mind. The players would literally just, their team's in the middle of a playoff race, and they're just like, no, I'm just going to rest so that I can get my body ready for the national team. And I was like, whoa, what? These guys are paying your salary, right? So are you seeing that shift? How long will that take till there's, I guess, more value? And maybe in the men's game, it's actually a little bit too much the other side, where players are too reticent to go in with their national team because their club team needs them and they're paying them and all that. So do you see that shift happening, and will it continue to shift? Because I think that shift needs to happen for NWSL to continue to be prominent and valued the right way.
Yeah, so like I said, it is shifting. It's definitely shifting from where when I was at the league in 2021, it was, that was an Olympic year. And Flacco was the coach. So the man I spend a good chunk of my days with was there. And it was, hey, we need a training camp, and we need this, and they need to come extra and all that type of stuff. And I think that was the first year, or we were getting close to not having any type of subsidization of national team player salaries. Right. So we've shifted in a good way. And I think that will continue, because I do think that there is slowly becoming that recognition of friendlies versus, qualifiers versus international championships. Hopefully that continues going. It'll be really interesting, especially as MLS is either confirmed or allegedly shifting their calendar. If that makes an impact on how that goes, because right now, we're smack dab in the middle of our season during these major tournaments, and, fully understand not only what it means for, the player themselves, but, having a bunch of NWSL players starting in the World Cup or starting in the Olympics and winning gold medals, like that helps. Huge. That helps the brand. So you don't want to stand in their way, but to your point, at the same time, like we have a job to do here too. So that'll be real. I think that might be the time, if both leagues, domestic leagues, ever flip calendars. If we see that shift fully goes back to now what the club game is. But I do notice that less and less, and I say this very positively, less and less are people and players saying, they're basically identifying as a women's national team player as much as they're identifying as a club player. And I would say 5-10 years ago, it was, I play for the women's national team, and by the way, I dabble in NWSL. Whereas now it's like, there's a lot more balance as far as that pride in representing, club and country. Yeah.
Last comment for me, we're going to wrap this up. I totally agree with you. And I thought that was an interesting dynamic. A couple of years ago, I have a friend who was an owner in NWSL, and he said, have a look at my team's Instagram. So I went on their Instagram, and he said, you don't see our team on there. All some of them were posting was women's national team photos. They weren't posting with their club crest, and I was shocked at that. But that has switched. You're right, which is just a great thing for NWSL. So listen, we can't thank you enough. This has been informative and exciting and fun, and we wish you so much success in the playoffs. Obviously, the first bit of business is done with the Shield, but good luck in the playoffs.
Thank you very much. Let me know when you guys are back in KC. We'll get you back to CPKC. Landon, you might enjoy it a little bit more as a neutral party this next time.
I love going and beating Kansas City every time. And last thing, Caitlin, in 3 or 4 years, there's going to be a young lady graduating from the University of Tennessee named Allie Howard. So if you need a striker up front,
let's go.
Keep in touch. Howard?
Allie Howard, yes, right. Put her first up on the striker list there.
Yeah, it's amazing. She's going to put some work in. I love it.
Tim Howard, the agent, is tough to deal with, so be careful.
Oh, man, those agents. That agent fee.
I just take backhanders and bungs. It's fine. Keep up.
Caitlin, thank you. Continued success. Amazing season you guys have had, and wishing you the very best in the playoffs.
Thank you. Really appreciated hanging out with you guys.
All right.